As my mum would say, jings. To this day, I have no idea what that means, but I know that she'd be surprised and delighted and grateful that all of you have made it into this room today. Thank you. Janet Jones was a beautiful woman. I often described Mum as such a Janet Jones. Long before Kim Kardashian was touting personal branding, Mum was a one-off. There were no other words to describe her. Janet Jones often made me laugh, but she never told jokes. Janet Jones, especially this week, often made me cry, but never tried to make me sad. The three things that characterised my mum's life, family, friends, and faith, are probably common to many here today. But Mum also had a unique gift for transforming things that were ordinary into things that were beautiful. In the Bible, Acts chapter 3 and verse 2 mentions an access point to the temple of God in Jerusalem. It's called the Beautiful Gate. It was a prominent entrance known for its magnificence. This is how I saw Mum's life. She was always focused on beauty. She liked dressing nice herself and having a nice house. No surface was safe from a lace doily or a linen tablecloth, and also had very stylish and elegant friends. But most importantly, she found beauty in the presence of God, and she was always helping others see and access that beauty. Always, after learning of visitor programs at overseas churches in the 1980s, she established visitor and welcome programs at every church she was a part of, including recruiting and training others to do the same. Literally thousands of visitors have felt welcomed into the presence of God because of Mum's work across various churches in the decades since. And it's an ongoing legacy that will last beyond her lifetime. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to take you back to a tiny town in the central west of New South Wales called Peak Hill. This farming and gold mining town is where Mum was born to her parents Walter and Hilda Job in 1939. She spent all of her formative years there. When Mum was 8 years of age, the whole family converted to Christianity under the ministry of the Sturgeons. Mum was proud to be a daughter of the Job family and would always take the opportunity to connect us with our cousins and aunties and uncles on both the Job and Jones sides. Although Mum did get her school certificate, at school she was more sporty than academic and played basketball and tennis, and after school she had piano lessons. Because Mum's mum died when she was just 13 years old, Mum had to leave school early to look after the home and her grieving father and younger sister Margaret while she was grieving herself and trying to navigate growing up without the support that most of us take for granted these days. Mum always said of this time, it was hard. But this event also shaped her lifelong priority. She just wanted to be a mum. When she was a teenager, she started work at Howard's, a retail shop in Peak Hill, as the head of the shoe department. When she ended her career 50 years later, she was also working in retail as a manager of the Salvo shop in Menai. At 18, she left home and went to live in Melbourne for 3 years, working for a wholesaler selling school uniforms in Flinders Lane. During this time, she also played the piano for some services at Richmond Temple and played accordion on the streets during open-air services. It's about time someone says this out loud, so my siblings finally understand. I'm obviously Mum's greatest achievement. But well before I was born, when Mum was only 19, she was part of something much bigger than her or me. As a 19-year-old in March 1959, Janet Jones sang on stage for 143,000 people. It was the biggest crowd the Melbourne Cricket Ground had ever had, and still has ever had. At the Billy Graham Crusade in Cliff Burrows Choir, the songs she sang included the hymn, How Great Thou Art, and 9,000 people made a decision to follow Jesus and learn more about the kingdom of God. When she was 21, she moved back to Peak Hill and again played piano for Sunday services at church. She then moved to Dubbo to work for 3 years in the engineering section of the PMG before it split up to become Telstra and Ozpost. When I recently asked Mum, what was the most fun time you've ever had? I had assumed it would be one of her many travel experiences overseas, or like maybe the Gaither music cruise around the Hawaiian Islands, maybe the time she was on TV in Australia or in the US, maybe the time Phil Jobe took her for a ride on the back of his Harley Davidson, or maybe flying in a helicopter with Dad on their 50th wedding anniversary. But she surprised me by saying it was the youth camp she went to as a teenager, particularly at Beulah Heights, where she made some lifelong friendships like Stan and Val Morton. When Mum was 21, it was at the 1960 Yarramundi Christian camp that Mum met Richard Jones, another one-off. And the rest, as they say, is history. In 1961, they became engaged and married in April of 1962. They lived in Guymer in Sydney and attended the AOG church. Janet Jones married my dad in the Peak Hill Assembly of God church that her dad donated the timber for and helped build. Just as her dad had physically built the church, Mum would find her own way to build the church later on. Her bridesmaids included her best friend, Judy Wells, and Dad's sister, Megan Butson, and the three of them would stay close their whole lives. Mum always prioritised friendship and family, not only in her own life, but she always took a keen interest in the friends and family of us kids too. Mum and Dad started their married life at the back of their parents' home in the Sutherland Shire over east. They eventually purchased their first home in Guymer, where between 1964 and 1967, Mum had 3 children in 3 years, Phil, me and Andy. Many of the friends Mum made during this time also got married and had kids around the same time, including Marlene and Alan Dulwich and Diane and Jim Johnson. In the case of her friend Judy, they even named the children the same names without even knowing what the other was doing. In 1969, Tamworth became the country music capital of Australia, and our family moved there, living on a chook farm just outside of Tamworth, owned by her brother John Jobe, before buying 12 acres and building a new home as neighbours to her sister Thelma and John Wilkinson, and Dad's sister, Megan and Lloyd Butson, and Dad's parents, Mike and Essie Jones. This new home is where Chrissy was born in 1972. The family support came in handy on a practical level, raising 4 kids, but it was more than that. It was choosing to be close to family as a way of life. Not long after, they chose to be closer to the city, this time on the other side of Sydney at West Pennant Hills, where Mum set fire to the whole street. But that's a story for another day. They then moved to West Borkham Hills, where our cousin Phil Job stayed with us while he was studying before he got married. I was at primary school, and Mum was my scripture teacher. There was another couple of temporary moves before we found ourselves in another new house back in the Sutherland Shire, and again, not far from family, with Phil Job and his family and Mum's sister Thelma and her family both close by. All three families were committed members of the Sutherland AOG Church. Mum taught Sunday school, and this was where Mum and Dad first established the visitors programs, training up teams of people to welcome others as they arrived at church. This is something most churchgoers will take for granted nowadays, but back then it was a real innovation and helped the church grow from just a handful of families into hundreds of members. As I said, Mum always just wanted to be a mum. She devoted her life unselfishly to helping us kids survive and thrive. Part of that was Mum's prayers. The fact that my brothers survived all their shenanigans is testament to God's grace and just how good a mum Janet Jones was. But Mum also returned to working retail during this time. The main skill her employers valued was her skill at making ordinary things beautiful. Even at the Salvo's second-hand warehouse, which had earned the nickname Tempe Tip, Mum had an eye for finding the treasure amongst the trash and creating displays which showcased their value. This attracted antique dealers and professional buyers. She also created friendships with both her staff and managers that outlasted her working years. Even though it's been more than 20 years since she worked with her Salvo's boss, Freddie Chu, he would ring her every birthday and sent flowers and a tribute this weekend, saying, "Janet was such a remarkable woman, not just as a friend, but in every role she carried." At the Salvation Army family stores, she was an absolute pillar. She coordinated and collaborated beautifully with all the store managers, had a wonderful gift for sorting out the strays, and always kept things running smoothly before reporting back to me. She was the kind of person who held things together quietly and faithfully. But in the late 80s, an opportunity too good to pass up saw Dad take a job in Perth, which started the Western Australian chapters. Not long after they arrived, either Mum, Chris or Dad set fire to the house in Kingsley. None of them will own it, and again, it's a story for another day. Phil and Chris both got married and had kids, Sasha and Mitchell, Sam, Nathan, Jamin and Jessie, and Mum loves smothering the grandkids with kisses and being involved in their young lives with school activities and family dinners. Some of those kids have already had kids too. Kayla, Jordan Ray, Caden, Grace, Brody and Oscar. So Mum was blessed to see her children's children's children, 4 generations loving each other. Mum would often cook a roast for a Sunday lunch or a Friday night family dinner. She loved having a full house and making sure everyone left feeling full. There was always way too much food, and after dinner she'd often pull out the piano accordion and lead everyone in a sing-along. Recently, when the grandkids brought the great-grandkids in to visit Mum in hospital, they sang her songs, and Mum said it was so lovely she felt like she could almost go to heaven right there and then. But after closing her eyes and giving it a try, she said to them, "Sorry I can't die." Just one example of her making us laugh without telling jokes. It was in WA she went to TAFE and qualified as a real estate agent and started marketing properties, again with her gift of making ordinary things beautiful. And in WA, Mum again established or enhanced visitor welcoming programs, including developing printed materials and packs to gift to each church visitor. This program has now extended in some churches out into the community, potentially touching literally millions more people. When she was in Joondalup Hospital in December, she was thrilled to receive a Christmas pack from her own church, Kingdom City, delivered to her ward. It was another tangible reminder that Mum had created a beautiful family and a beautiful life that is still helping others get ushered into the presence of God, even from their hospital beds. Last month, Mum and Dad celebrated their 64th wedding anniversary. As Mum and Dad had grown old together, they both had challenges, but supported each other through every challenge. They used to joke that they weren't much good on their own, but together they made one good one. If Mum was here today, she'd remind everyone to make time for family, forgive quickly, never stop talking to and loving each other, even when you're hurt and even when it's hard. Always stay in touch with your friends. New friends are like silver, but old friends are like gold. And find the beautiful gate, that place of awe that helps you find the presence of God. It might be in the bush or on the farm, it might be in the surf or reading the Bible or going to church, but there's nothing more beautiful than connecting with God and finding faith. And if you've already found your faith, help make a beautiful gate for others to find their own moment with God. Mum was a beautiful woman, a one of a kind, a woman of family, friends and faith, and occasional fires. She left a legacy of love, laughter and music. She was very, very, very loved, and such a Janet Jones. Jings, we'll miss you, Mum.
Well done, Shaz.